Back to the Future is about a young man who's accidentally sent back in time.
Gag reel.
Back to the Future is one of the most celebrated films of all time, and rightfully so. Its script has gone on to be used as a textbook example of screenwriting. Its props and characters have become part of pop culture. But 35 years after its premiere, its musical score stands out as one of the most iconic soundtracks I've ever heard. Even more impressive when you consider it was composer Alan Silvestri's only second orchestral score. So to show my appreciation to one of my all-time favorite films, in this video, I'll highlight the musical and storytelling techniques Silvestri used to create a film score that would go down as a masterpiece of film music.
Unlike anything I've ever done before, Bob nor anyone else had heard one note of anything. Nothing. Not a theme, no whistling on the phone, nothing.
At 35 years old, although composer Alan Silvestri had scored popular TV shows, he only had a handful of credits as composer for feature films. His most notable one up to that point was his first collaboration with director Robert Zemeckis on the film Romancing the Stone. However, Silvestri had not written an orchestral score for a film at the scale and expectations that Back to the Future presented. And although Robert Zemeckis was confident in his composer, not everyone involved shared his sentiments. Even executive producer and Back to the Future champion Steven Spielberg had his doubts about Silvestri's ability to meet the project's demands.
Bob had worked with Alan Silvestri on Romancing the Stone, and Steven wasn't that enamored of the score of Romancing the Stone, and he made no bones about making that clear. And he thought that we needed somebody that could do a more John Williams kind of a score.
I mean, to Spielberg's defense, when you listen to Silvestri's score for Romancing the Stone, one doesn't necessarily think of big orchestral music. And to make things more interesting for the young composer, Zemeckis' main request for the music in Back to the Future was to make it sound and quote, big.
Big. Big. I kept telling Al that all I wanted was the score to be big.
This direction came from Zemeckis' own insecurity for a lack of stylistic wide shots you would often find in big-scale adventure films.
Bob, in the making of that film, didn't have a lot of expansive, scopy shots. Where were the big shots? There were none. And yet, it's about great heroism, great friendship, great love, great adventure, but no real visual panoramas, to give you that big desert shot, looking off into infinity. None of that.
Regardless of the high-stakes situation, Silvestri created a one-of-a-kind film score driven by storytelling and thematic material woven throughout the entire score. Before we dive into the score of Back to the Future, let's quickly define what is a music theme, or leitmotif as it is sometimes called. A music theme is a musical idea that is repeated in order to create an association to a narrative or story element. So with that said, let's look at the musical themes Silvestri created and how he uses them throughout the entire score. Up first is one of the two main themes of Back to the Future. The theme frequently underscores pivotal moments where our hero is on his way to overcome obstacles. The theme also creates the musical basis for most of the score, thanks to its use of the tritone. That third note That is the tritone, or the devil's interval, as it is sometimes referred to as well. And it has such a name because it creates a great amount of dissonance, which is a sound that creates tension that listeners typically want to hear resolved. Some might say it sounds like a mistake. And you could say that this is similar to when Marty travels back to 1955. In 1955, everything is in the right place except him. He's the mistake. By having E a half step higher, Silvestri moves into a B-flat Lydian scale, where he uses the tension from the tritone to great dramatic effect to further support the film's theme of the parallels of time traveling. Although the main theme is built around creating tension, Silvestri also cleverly uses it to give a sense of resolution. In the climatic scene where George and Lorraine kiss, thus falling in love and fixing the existential jeopardy Marty created when he saved George from being hit by a car, if we take a look at the melody in the string instruments, we can spot Silvestri's use of the main theme, but now with a tail-end pattern that resolves the tension. Thus, he's supporting the narrative of the film and telling us musically how things are now fixed. To quote Doug Brown, everything will be fine. Another way Silvestri utilizes the main theme is by truncating it in order to create great dramatic tension. In climatic scenes, Silvestri uses this variation to great dramatic effect. He also uses a technique called modulation, which is changing the tonality of the melody, and therefore providing the theme with great forward momentum to build dramatic tension. I like to think of it as the same way the gear shifts in the DeLorean to build up towards that 88 miles per hour. Now let's go back to that third note of the main theme, the devil's interval. If we were to, quote, fix that tritone and take it a half step lower, we would find one of my favorite variations of the main theme. Now, it has a diatonic quality, which means we're using the natural pitches of the musical key, and it's absent of any dissonance, like the dissonance the tritone creates. So this gives us a warmer feeling. And Silvestri uses this variation to underscore moments of character introspection by often having the main melody performed by a solo instrument to further connect us with a particular character's emotions.
It's going to be really hard waiting 30 years before I can talk to you about everything that's happened in the past few days. I'm really going to miss you, Marty.
I'm really going to miss you. Doc, about the future.
No! Marty! We've already agreed that having information about the future can be extremely dangerous. Even if your intentions are good, it can backfire.
Now moving on to the second main theme, which frequently follows the first main theme, and it often underscores moments of triumphs. So if the first theme builds up the tension while our heroes face their obstacle, the second main theme, that's the fist pump in the air once they overcome them. And even though it's often orchestrated for trumpets and horns, the theme is also used in string instruments for a more melancholic and romantic effect. Although there are two main themes, Silvestri creates a handful of minor themes that he cleverly uses throughout the score to further support the narrative. By inverting the first three notes of the main theme, Silvestri creates a variation he uses to underscore moments that hint at the negative aspects of time traveling.
The future is in your hands. If you believe in progress, re-elect Mayor Red Thomas.
Had a horrible nightmare. Dreamed I went back in time. Yes. Please take whatever precautions are necessary to prevent this terrible disaster.
Most of the minor themes are derived out of a symmetrical diminished scale, which is a scale that is equally divided throughout the octave in the following pattern. It goes half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. To further understand how the symmetrical diminished scale serves as the fabric of most of the score, let's look at our second minor theme. This motivic element is a ringing effect. Which Silvestri uses to accompany the fantasy elements of the score, especially time traveling.
Ah, Jesus Christ! Jesus Christ, Doc, you disintegrated Einstein!
Calm down, Marty. I didn't disintegrate anything. The molecular structure of Einstein. This proves my theory. Look at your brother.
His head's gone. It's like it's been erased.
Erased from existence.
So let's see, if we were to combine all the notes presented in this theme, we would actually get a C-sharp symmetrical diminished scale. Within this scale, we can find the main theme itself. So by sticking with this scale, Silvestri creates a handful of minor themes and music behaviors throughout the entire score that is, at the end of it, derived directly from the main theme. Another minor theme is the following ostinato, and an ostinato just means a musical phrase that persistently repeats in the same musical voice. Which Silvestri utilizes as our heroes find themselves facing an obstacle.
Whoa, kid, stop. Hey! Boy. I'll get it back to you, all right?
During these obstacles, an F-sharp octatonic melody plays in the violins and woodwinds.
Wow, look at him go!
Silvestri also uses a second ostinato which usually plays in the lower instruments of the orchestra to signal when our characters are in the most danger.
Damn it, Doc. Why did you have to tear up that letter?
Next up, we have a handful of motives that Silvestri utilizes when characters are discovering something. The first one is used when Marty sees that his future home hasn't been built yet. The second motive, this one plays when Doc and Marty are retrieving the DeLorean.
Flux capacitor.
When Doc reads the clock tower flyer.
Unfortunately, you never know when or where it's ever gonna strike.
We do now.
And when Marty admits to accidentally meeting his parents.
You interacted with anybody else today besides me?
Yeah, well, I might have sort of bumped into my parents.
Great Scott!
And last but certainly not least, we have a bunch of small motives that together create the thematic material that we associate with Doc Brown.
If we could somehow harness this lightning, channel it into the temporal displacement occurred exactly 1:20 a.m. in 0 seconds!
Ah, Jesus Christ.
And here's the thing that I love about the music for Doc Brown is that unlike most musical themes, which are usually created by a singular driving melody, Doc Brown's theme is actually a mashup of a lot of small musical ideas. And the cool thing is, it creates this frantic theme music for him that perfectly encapsulate his quirky scientist thought process. And so now that we have identified all the themes and music techniques Silvestri uses, let's try something. I want to see a scene with his score so we can appreciate the level of storytelling that the music brings to it.
Marty, I'm sorry, but the only power source capable of generating 1.21 gigawatts of electricity is a bolt of lightning.
What did you say?
A bolt of lightning. Unfortunately, you never know when or where it's ever gonna strike.
We do now.
This is it. This is the answer. It says here that a bolt of lightning is going to strike the clock tower precisely 10:04 p.m. next Saturday night. If we could somehow harness this lightning, channel it into the flux capacitor, it just might work. Next Saturday night, We're sending you back to the future.
Okay, all right. Saturday's good. Saturday's good. I can spend a week in 1955. I can hang out. You can show me around.
Marty, that is completely out of the question. You must not leave this house. You must not see anybody or talk to anybody. Anything you do could have serious repercussions on future events. Do you understand?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Marty, have you interacted with anybody else today besides me?
Yeah, well, I might have sort of bumped into my parents.
Great Scott! Let me see that photograph again of your brother. Just as I thought. This proves my theory. Look at your brother.
His head's gone. It's like it's been erased.
Erased from existence.
So to cap it all off, I want to go back to where we started. This was Alan Silvestri's only second orchestral score he had composed for a film. And with all things considered, Silvestri's score for the film is nothing short of spectacular. Back to the Future still remains a beloved film and a staple of pop culture, even 35 years after its release. And although there are many reasons behind the film's success, one simply cannot overlook Silvestri's contribution and the power of a great film score. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, that's awesome, that's great. And with that in mind, just a friendly reminder to please subscribe to the channel. That way, you're not just only aware of new videos that come up on the channel, but you also help us grow. So thanks again for watching.